sang like the whistle of a lonely freight car, with every heartfelt performance,
and brought old school Americana
was more
to
than
life
just
with
a singer.
every heartfelt
He was a
performance.
cultural
Boxcar
relic of a
Willie,
fading
born
era
Lecil
into a
Travis Martin,
multi-million-dollar
was more than just a
empire.
singer.
He
was
became a
cultural
household
relic of a
name,
fading era.
beloved
A man
by
who
working-class
turned a
America.
railroad-themed persona
Was
into
a much more
multi-million-dollar
complicated
empire.
story.
From the Grand Ole Opry to the neon
Betrayal,
lights of
and
Branson,
she passed in
Missouri,
1999.
he became a
The
household
world was
name
told
beloved by
it was
working-class
leukemia.
America. But
Over the
beneath
years,
charm,
with rumors
laughter,
of financial
and signature
coercion
overalls was
that
a
may
much
have
more
turned on him
complicated story.
in his final years,
One marked by
and
secrecy,
carefully managed
betrayal,
public memory.
and a chilling silence
But now,
that followed him to the
evidence
grave.
that changes
When he passed in
everything we thought we
1999,
knew
the world
about
was told
Boxcar
it was
Willie's death,
leukemia.
and the
But close
personal
friends
accounts
and
of
family
those who
never
remained
quite
silent.
accepted that explanation.
And by the
Over
end
the
of this
years,
video,
whispers grew
you'll
louder.
understand why the
Rumors
truth
of
about
financial
Boxcar
coercion,
Willie.
suspicious
Boxcar Willie
contracts,
was born
and a
Lecil
trusted
Travis
inner circle
Martin
that
in
may have turned on him
1931.
in his
He was
final
drawn to
years.
the sounds
For
of trains
decades,
and the
the
soulful
truth was
twang of
buried
country
under tribute
music.
albums and
He didn't
carefully
start out on the
managed public
stage,
memory.
though.
But
His
now,
first path
startling
was
new
through the
evidence
Lecil
has
served
emerged.
proudly in the
Evidence
U.S.
that
Air
changes
Force
everything we
and
thought we
dreamed of a
knew
life
about
beyond
Boxcar
the
Willie's
runway
death. In
of
this
country
special
music.
investigation, we follow
He
the
created the
money, missing
Boxcar Willie
paperwork,
persona
and the
after
personal
watching a
accounts of those who
hobo
remained silent
and
until
vanish
now.
into and the
mystery has
character
finally
was
been
born.
solved.
It
And
was
by the
more
end of
than
this
just a
video,
gimmick,
you'll understand
and a
why the
longing
truth
for
about
a simpler
Boxcar Willie
time.
was never meant to be told.
Complete with
Boxcar Willie
overalls,
was born
weathered
Lecil
caps,
Travis Martin in
Boxcar Willie struck
1931
gold in the
Ellis
UK
County,
first.
Texas.
Soon,
From a young
he was
age,
performing
he
on
was
Hee
drawn to
Haw
the sounds
and
of
the
trains
Grand
and
Ole
the soulful
Opry.
twang of country music.
He wasn't
Both of
part
which
of the
would become
Nashville
lifelong
elite.
signatures
He
of
was
his
one of
style.
them.
He didn't start out on
But
the
with
stage,
fame,
though.
put
His
strain
first
on
path
both his
was through the
personal
sky.
and financial
Lecil
life.
served proudly in
Have
the
since
US Air
revealed
Force, becoming a
whispers
flight
began
engineer
about
on
legal
B-29
troubles involving
bombers
his
and later a
theater
pilot.
in Branson,
But even
Missouri,
in the cockpit,
and
he couldn't
allegations
shake
that
the pull
family
of
taking
country music.
advantage of his trusting
During
nature.
downtime, he wrote songs and
Boxcar
dreamed of a
tried
life
to maintain
beyond the
his
runway.
image as
A
the
life on
folksy,
stage with a
but
guitar
some
in
believed
hand
the
and a
stress of what
story
was
in
happening
every
off
lyric.
stage.
He created the Boxcar
The
Willie
manipulation,
persona
and
after
the sense
watching a
of being
hobo jump
used,
onto a
his
moving
public
train and
appearances
vanish
became
into the
less
distance.
frequent.
That image
When he was
burned into his
diagnosed with
memory, and
leukemia,
the
it seemed
character
like
was
just
born.
another
It
tragic
was
blow
more
to
than
a
just a
man
gimmick.
who had
It
already
was an
endured
identity
so
rooted
much.
in working-class struggle,
But that now,
freight yard
decades
nostalgia,
later,
and a
the
longing
questions
for a
weren't
simpler
just
time.
about his
By the
illness,
late 1970s,
but about who
he
stood to
fully
gain the
embraced
most
act,
from his silence.
complete with overalls,
Klein, so
weathered
did the
caps,
world he
and
had
the
built
mournful
around
sound
him.
of yesteryear.
Publicly,
The gamble
he
paid
tried to
off.
maintain the same
Boxcar
jovial
Willie struck
spirit
gold
he'd
in the
always
UK
shown.
first,
But
thanks to a
behind the
televised
scenes,
talent show
things were
appearance that
falling
made him an
apart
instant
fast.
favorite. Soon
Once
he was
a booming
performing on
attraction
Hee Haw
drawing
and the Grand Ole
thousands of
Opry
fans
and
to
recording
Missouri
albums
each
that
year,
resonated with
built as
fans
a
tired
symbol
of
of his
slick modern
success
country.
and a
He wasn't
tribute to
part
the
of
music he
Nashville elite,
loved.
but
But what
that
the
only
public
made
didn't
people
see
love him more.
was the deep
He was one of
mismanagement.
them,
Legal
an everyman,
documents later revealed that
storyteller in
Boxcar may
denim
have
and
been
flannel.
unaware
But with fame
about some
came
of the
pressure,
deals being
and
made under
Boxcar
his
Willie's
name.
rise to prominence put
Trusted
strain
business
on both
partners
his personal
allegedly
and
made
financial
questionable
life.
financial
Though he seemed
decisions,
like the picture of country
began
comfort,
maneuvering for control
insiders
over
have
parts
since
of his
revealed
estate
growing tensions
before
behind
he
closed
even
doors.
passed.
Whispers
By people
began
he
about
once
legal
trusted.
troubles involving his
He
theater,
had begun withdrawing
management
from
disputes
public
over his
appearances,
rapidly expanding
not just
business
because of
empire
his
in
health,
Branson,
but because
Missouri,
he no
and
longer felt in
allegations that
control of
family
the
members
empire
and
he had
business
built.
partners were taking
While
advantage
some
of his
relatives
trusting
worked
nature.
tirelessly to
Despite it
protect
all,
him,
Boxcar
than how
tried to
Boxcar
maintain his
himself was
image
holding
as the
up.
folksy, humble
Friends
entertainer.
reported
But some believed the
suspicious
stress
and
of what
distant,
was happening off stage, the
possibly
money, the
even change his will,
and the sense of being
but he
used
never got the
may have
chance.
weighed heavier than anyone
Passed
knew.
away from
His public
leukemia,
appearances
simple and
became
somber.
less frequent.
A beloved,
His
but what happened
performances
after his death
increasingly subdued.
only deepened the
When he was
sense that
diagnosed
something
with
had gone
leukemia in the
terribly
late
wrong.
1990s,
Disputes
it seemed like just
erupted over
another
his
tragic blow to a
allegations
man
flew
who had
between
already
family
endured so
members,
much.
former
But those
managers,
closest to him
forgery
insist
and
something
fraud
else was
emerged.
happening.
Some
Something he never
involving
spoke about,
large sums
but
of
that
money.
now, decades later, is
and all.
finally coming to light.
A previously
The questions
sealed
weren't
set
just
of
about
legal
his
documents
illness,
surfaced
but about
years
who
later.
stood to gain
In
the
it,
most from
he
his
wrote
silence.
cryptically about
As Boxcar
feeling
Willie's
watched,
health began to
Those closest to him now
so
say
did
it
the
was
world
his
he had
quiet
built around
warning.
him. By the late
The mystery
1990s,
wasn't just
the
about how
leukemia
he
diagnosis
died,
shook both his
and
fans
whether
and his
someone
family.
made sure he couldn't
Publicly,
speak
he
out.
tried to maintain the
Something
same jovial spirit
strange
he'd always
unfolded.
shown.
His once
Still donning
vibrant
his iconic
Branson
hobo outfit,
fans who had traveled
still
from across
smiling
the
for
country
cameras when he
to see
could.
his
But behind the
performances
scenes,
long after
things
his
were
death
falling apart fast.
shuddered,
His
and the
beloved
smiling
Branson
image
Theater,
of Boxcar
once a
was
booming
quietly
attraction drawing
without
thousands of
ceremony.
fans to Missouri each
What
year,
had been a beacon
became
of
the
classic
center of growing
Americana
financial controversy.
Several performers who had claimed that the theater had been bled dry long before his death. Revenue that should have been reinvested in the business. So did the integrity of those managing his affairs. A month before his death, Boxcar's name was removed from the deed of a private residence he had owned, was suddenly transferred to a corporate entity. No announcement, no family, not a legal loophole had. Was Boxcar being systematically erased from his own empire? Stage-worn and intimate photographs were missing from his home, sold through estate auctions that no one in the family had approved. Investigators were brought in, but by then, uncold. Boxcar's widow, Loeen, placated legal storm, found herself battling individuals who claimed they'd been royalties or ownership of certain assets. Agreements and contracts. Someone close to Boxcar could have known. Friends and family who tried to push back, stop asking questions, didn't just fall victim to leukemia. He may have been a target of calculated financial exploitation. And buried within the legal confusion and silence, as legal battles over Boxcar Willie's estate intensified, and what they found was deeply unsettling. For months, Boxcar was increasingly isolated. Once regular visitors were turned away at the door. Even his own children allegedly struggled to get time alone with him. One longtime friend, a fellow performer from Branson, confused, almost sedated, and was heavily guarded by handlers. Another visitor recounted a similar experience, saying, "He was so out of it. I don't think he even knew I was there. And I should leave." Meanwhile, on Boxcar's behalf, power of attorney transfers that didn't align with his previous values. One alarming discovery revealed, with a different beneficiary quietly added. It was a name tied to one of his former business partners. Investigators began to question whether Boxcar, in his weakened state, didn't sign at all, who pointed out odd inconsistencies in several key signatures. Someone had infiltrated Boxcar's life when he was most vulnerable. Adding to the mystery, Boxcar's medical records became difficult to obtain. Requests made by family and journalists were either ignored or met with red tape. One nurse, anonymously, claimed she felt something was off, too many eyes watching, she said. By the time the dust had settled, but of a calculated effort to exploit that tragedy, including a handwritten note from Boxcar himself. Losing control and regretting who I trusted, that he sensed betrayal, that he knew someone was planning to erase his control over his own legacy. But what he may have discovered in his final days, as the dust began to settle after Boxcar Willie's passing, which had been a cornerstone of his success, was sold under unusual circumstances, were stunned to discover the venue closed not long. The marquee lights went out. The doors was now a relic, abandoned faster than anyone expected. Whispers began circulating in the tight-knit Branson entertainment community. Once shared the stage with Boxcar, claim moved, contracts were rewritten, staff were quietly let go, without explanation. It seemed the moment Boxcar's health started to wane, but the biggest red flag came in the form of a mysterious property transaction. For over a decade, the home, a modest but comfortable house on the outskirts of town, linked to one of his former business partners. Knowledge just gone, been exploited, and it raised a simple but chilling question. Even more disturbing, family members discovered that several of his prized personal belongings, outfits, original banjo recordings, some began surfacing online. Proved. The trail had gone. Found herself at the center of a complex, hard to retain control over what remained of his estate. Promised rights. It suspiciously timed. Some present. Others seem to act on information only either ignored or legally silenced. A few even claimed to receive anonymous warnings to. At the heart of it all was the growing belief that Boxcar Willie, while in his most vulnerable state, was one unanswered question: who had the most to gain from Boxcar Willie's death?
back were either
Fans and
ignored or
investigators
legally
alike
silenced.
began to
A
dig
few
deeper
even
into the
claimed to
timeline
receive
leading up to his
anonymous
death.
warnings to stop
Reports
asking
emerged
questions.
that during his
At the heart
final,
of it all
both
was the
physically
growing
and
belief that
emotionally.
Boxcar Willie didn't just
Close
fall victim
friends,
to
it was
leukemia.
as if a wall had
He
been
may have
built
been a
around the
target
man
of
who once
calculated
lit up every
financial
room
exploitation
with a
while in
train
his most
whistle and a
vulnerable
smile.
state. And buried
Later
within the
claimed
legal
that on
confusion
one
and
visit,
silence
he
was
noticed
one unanswered
Boxcar
question.
seemed who weren't
Who had
part
the
of
most
his
to gain
original
from
crew.
Boxcar Willie's death?
And there were people
As
I'd
legal
never
battles
seen
over
before
Boxcar
telling me
Willie's
he
estate
needed to rest.
intensified.
Documents
Fans
began
and
surfacing that
investigators alike
indicated new
began to
financial
dig deeper
decisions
into
were
the
being made,
timeline leading up
rapid
to his
movement
death.
of funds,
And what they found
and
was deeply
contractual
unsettling.
obligations. He
Reports
wore a
emerged
train
that during
conductor's
his
cap
final months,
and brought
Boxcar was
old-school
increasingly
Americana
isolated,
to life.
both
Boxcar
physically and
Willie,
emotionally.
born
Close
Lecil
friends,
Travis
once
Martin,
regular visitors,
a man
were
who
turned
turned a
away at the door.
railroad-themed
Even his own
persona
children
from the
allegedly
Grand
struggled
Ole
to get time
Opry
alone with him.
to the
It was
neon
as if a
lights
wall
of
had been
Branson,
built around the
Missouri.
man who once
But
lit up
beneath the
every room
charm,
with a train
laughter,
whistle and a smile.
and signature
One longtime
overalls,
friend,
one
a
marked
fellow
by
performer
sealing
from Branson,
silence that followed
later
him to the
claimed that on
grave.
one visit,
But
noticed
close
Boxcar
friends and
seemed
family
confused,
never quite accepted
almost
that
sedated,
explanation.
and was heavily guarded
Whispers
by
grew
handlers
louder.
who weren't part of
Suspicious
his original crew.
contracts
Another
and
visitor
a trusted
recounted a
inner
similar
circle.
experience,
For
saying,
decades, the truth was
"He was
buried
so out
under
of it, I
tribute
don't think he
albums.
even knew I was there.
Startling
And there were
new
people I'd never
evidence
seen
has
before telling
emerged.
me he needed to
In this
rest
special
and I should
investigation,
leave. Meanwhile,
we follow the money,
documents began
the missing
surfacing that
paperwork,
indicated new financial
until
decisions
now.
were being made on Boxcar's
The mystery has
behalf.
finally been
Power
solved.
of attorney
Was
transfers,
never meant to be
rapid
told.
movement of funds,
In Ellis
and
County,
contractual
Texas,
obligations that didn't
from a
align
young
with his
age,
previous
both
values.
of which would
One
become
alarming
lifelong
discovery
signatures
revealed
of
that
his
his
style.
life insurance policy had been altered mere weeks before his death, with a different beneficiary.
Becoming a
quietly
flight
added.
engineer
It
on
wasn't his
B-29
wife.
bombers,
It wasn't
and
his
later
children.
a pilot.
It was a name tied
But even
to
in
one
the
of his former
cockpit,
business
he
partners,
couldn't shake the
same
pull.
person who
During
gained
downtime,
control over his
he
Branson
wrote song,
theater.
A Life on
Investigators
Stage,
began to
with a
question
guitar
whether
in hand,
Boxcar, in
and a
his weakened
story
state,
in every
had been
lyric.
manipulated
Jump
into
onto
signing
a moving
documents he
train
didn't fully
distance.
understand,
That
or
image
worse,
burned
didn't
into his
sign at all.
memory.
Handwriting
It was an
experts were
identity
brought
rooted in
by
working
concerned
class
family
struggle,
members who pointed
freight
out
yard
odd
nostalgia.
inconsistencies
By
in
the late
several key
1970s,
signatures. Though
he'd
nothing
fully
could be
embraced
proven
the act
definitively,
and the
the
mournful
suspicion
sound
remained.
of yesteryear.
Someone had
The
infiltrated
gamble
Boxcar's
paid
life
off,
when he was most vulnerable,
thanks to a
using his
televised talent
trust
show
and declining
appearance
health to
that
gain
made
control.
him an instant
Adding to the
favorite.
mystery,
And
Boxcar's
recording
medical
albums that
records became
resonated with
difficult to
fans
obtain.
tired of slick
Requests
modern
made by
country.
family and journalists
But that
were
only
either
made people
ignored or
love
met
him
with
more.
red tape.
Every man,
Those who had worked
a
closely with
storyteller
him
in
during
denim
his
and
cancer
flannel,
treatments refused
came
to speak
pressure.
on record.
and
One
Boxcar
nurse
Willie's rise to
anonymously claimed
prominence,
she felt
though he
something was
seemed
off
like
about
the
the people
picture of
managing
country
his care
comfort.
near the end.
Insiders
Too much
owing
control,
tensions
too many
behind
eyes
closed
watching,
doors.
she said.
Management
By the time the
disputes
dust
over
had
his
settled,
rapidly
a
expanding
clearer
business
picture was
empire.
forming, not just of a beloved entertainer's tragic death,
Members and business
but of a
partners were,
calculated
despite
effort
it
to
all,
exploit that
humble
tragedy for
entertainer.
financial and
The
personal
money may
gain.
have weighed
And the
heavier
deeper
than
people
anyone
dug,
knew.
the more it became
His
apparent
performances
someone had
increasingly
orchestrated this
subdued.
silence.
In the late
Someone didn't
1990s,
want the truth
it
to
seemed,
come out.
but those closest
now,
to him
after
insist
years of
something
rumors
else
and
was
fragmented
happening.
facts,
Something
the
he
puzzle
never
pieces
spoke
were
about
finally coming together.
is finally
question was,
coming to light.
Would justice
As
ever catch
Boxcar
up
Willie's
to the
health
ones
began to
responsible?
by the late
As the tension around
1990s, the
Boxcar Willie's
leukemia
final years
diagnosis
grew,
shook
so did
both his
questions about
fans
the people
and his
closest to
family.
him during that critical
Public
period.
still donning
One
his
name kept
iconic
surfacing,
hobo outfit,
an old business
still
associate
smiling for
turned
cameras
caretaker
when
who
he
had
could,
gradually taken on
became
more
the
and more
center of
control
growing
over
financial
Willie's personal
controversy.
affairs,
The theater
finances,
was supposed
and
to
career
secure
management.
Boxcar's
This man,
legacy for
whose identity
decades,
we'll withhold for
and
legal
mounting
reasons,
debts accumulating
was
in the
known
background,
Branson entertainment
or
circuit.
intentionally
At first,
kept in the dark,
he had been seen
and
as a
multiple
loyal
people with
promoter,
access to his
someone
funds
who helped keep Boxcar's
in
image
private.
alive as his health
Boxcar
wing.
reportedly
But behind
confided
the
in
curtain,
close friends
his
he had
influence
begun
had
withdrawing
quietly
from
grown
public
into
appearances.
domination.
There were
According to
also rumors of
insiders,
growing tension
Boxcar
within his
had once
family.
trusted this
Others were
associate
said to be more
implicitly.
concerned
They
with
had
what
worked
they might
together for
inherit,
over a
that the once
decade,
lively
and it was this
entertainer had
history of
become
trust
noticeably
that
more
allowed the
quiet.
associate to gain
But some
access to
believed he was
vital areas
preparing
of
to confront
Boxcar's
those
life.
around him.
He started
In April of 1999, Boxcar Willie,
and eventually
the
speaking
official
on behalf
narrative,
of
was country
Boxcar in
legend,
meetings.
taken too
But when
soon
Willie's
by
health
illness.
began to decline rapidly,
Almost
that
immediately,
access turned
state
into near complete
and business
control.
partners.
The same man who
Accusations
had
of
once driven him to
theft,
shows
others
was now
involving
controlling who
property
could
that
see him and
mysteriously
who
changed
couldn't.
hands just
Family
days
members
before his
reportedly
passing.
began raising red
Passed.
flags.
His
Willie's
beloved
son, in
Branson
particular,
theater, that his
expressed
life
concern
insurance
that the man
policy
was making
had been
executive
altered mere
decisions
weeks
without
before
the
his
family's
death.
approval.
It wasn't his
Yet every
wife.
time someone tried
It
to
wasn't his
intervene,
children.
they were met with
The
resistance.
same person who'd gained control over his
documents,
Branson
court
theater
filings, and
had
vague
been
threats
manipulated
that their
into
actions were
signing
against
documents he
Willie's
didn't
wishes.
fully
It was all
understand.
extremely
Or
murky,
worse, Handwriting experts were brought in by concerned family members, though nothing could be proven definitively. The suspicion remained, using his trust and declining health to gain control. Those who had worked closely with him during his cancer treatments refused to speak on the record about the people managing his care near the end. Too much control, a clearer picture was forming, not just of a beloved entertainer's tragic death for financial and personal gain. And the deeper people dug, the more it became apparent. Someone had orchestrated this silence. Someone didn't want the truth to come out. But now, the puzzle pieces were finally coming together. As attention around Boxcar Willie's final years grew, one name kept surfacing, an old business associate turned caretaker and career management. This man, whose identity we'll withhold for legal reasons, someone who helped keep Boxcar's image alive as his health waned. According to insiders, Boxcar had once trusted this associate implicitly. They had worked together for over a decade, and it was this history of trust. He started managing bookings, handling theater operations, and, eventually, when Willie's health began to decline rapidly, the same man who had once driven him to shows was now controlling. Family members reportedly began raising red flags, expressed concern that the man was making executive decisions. They were met with resistance. Legal documents, court filings were against Willie's wishes to speak for himself during the final months. Even more troubling was a set that occurred shortly before Willie's death, were quietly transferred to a holding company connected to this associate. Was moved out of Boxcar's name with no clear explanation. Didn't match Boxcar's known handwriting. Once again, adding to the tension, Boxcar's iconic train-themed Branson theater, longtime employees were suddenly out of jobs, and the theater that once rang with laughter and steel guitar was gutted. Fans who visited the site later described it as eerily hollow. But perhaps the most chilling moment came during an interview with one of the properties, valued at over $600,000. The deed included a signature that family members later argued handwriting experts were inconclusive. But the suspicion lingered. Once a bustling hub of nostalgia and Americana, was sold just months after his passing. The buyer, a shell corporation with ties to the same associate, repurposed for an unrelated business venture. Like the soul of Boxcar had been stripped out along with the decor. After years of rumors and fragmented facts, the question was, would justice ever catch up to the ones responsible? So did questions about the people closest to him during that critical period, who had gradually taken on more and more control over Willie's personal affairs. Finances was known in the Branson entertainment circuit. At first, he had been seen as a loyal promoter. Behind the curtain, his influence had quietly grown into domination that allowed the associate to gain access to vital areas of Boxcar's life. Speaking on behalf of Boxcar in meetings, that access turned into near-complete control. Who could see him and who couldn't? Willie's son, in particular, without the family's approval. Yet every time someone tried to intervene, and vague threats that their actions were, it was all extremely murky, made worse by Willie's deteriorating ability, that of property transfers. Public records show that parcels of land owned by Boxcar knew, he said. He knew someone was taking advantage of him. He was surrounded. Every phone call was screened. He couldn't even reach out for help. A man who had spent his career celebrating the common American spirit was devastating. About illness or fame that has led many to believe that the story of Boxcar Willie's final days was far more tragic. While much of the focus had been on Boxcar Willie's professional betrayal, one that revolved around his personal life, fans saw Boxcar and his wife, Loeen, as a down-to-earth couple, often seen praying together before shows. But behind the public appearances, trust, and the people Boxcar had become close friends noted that Loeen Loeen
never
had started in the final
formally
2 years, others
became a
to
rallying
quiet
cry for
tension
those
that was
seeking
never
justice.
addressed.
The family,
The couple had been living
armed with
in
years of
Boxcar's
ignored
deteriorating
warning
health
signs, and
only
now a
widened the
final
gap,
plea from Boxcar
and her
himself
stagehand, who had
began
worked at the
pushing
theater
harder
for
investigations.
years.
What was initially
But
seen
by the
as a
time he
natural end
realized
to a
how
long,
deep it went,
storied life
it
had
was
now
too
become
late.
something else entirely.
Every letter was
A
read.
web of manipulation,
The idea
fear,
that
and
Boxcar
control.
Willie had
The
died
deeper the
surrounded
family
not
dug,
by loved
the
ones
more
but
they
by
realized how far the
opportunists.
rot had spread.
The narrative
Not
wasn't
only
just
had
about, it
Boxcar
was
been
about
financially
betrayal.
exploited,
And it was
but
this
he may have
betrayal,
also been
and
emotionally
far more
isolated from the
calculated
people who
than
mattered most.
anyone could have
And the
imagined.
worst part, he knew it.
Another layer
He
of the
felt it.
mystery began
He
to
wrote it.
emerge,
The mystery
particularly
wasn't just
his
about what
relationship
happened
with
to
his wife
Boxcar
and
Willie.
children.
It was about
For
who let it
years,
happen and
grounded
why.
in faith
As
and
the
family
investigation
values,
deepened,
they appeared at
something
fan
alarming
club
came to
events
light.
hand in hand.
There were connections
whispers
between
of
the people
growing
controlling
distance,
Boxcar Willie's
of arguments
estate and a
about
string of
money,
similar
guns
cases
surrounding
involving
himself
other
with,
aging country
started
stars
appearing
from the
less
Branson
and
circuit.
less at his
A
public
quiet pattern
engagements
began to
of his
emerge.
life.
Older
Some
entertainers,
chalked it up to
many with
exhaustion,
loyal fan bases
but former
and
house
valuable
staff later
intellectual
claimed
property
increasingly
suddenly found
separate
themselves
lives.
surrounded by business
Bob and his
partners
own
who gained
wife.
control over their
This
image,
created a dangerous
finances,
vacuum.
and final
Outsiders,
decisions.
particularly the
In nearly
controlling
every case,
associate,
there were abrupt changes
Boxcar,
in
without
legal
resistance
documentation,
from those who
wills,
truly
trusts,
loved him.
power of attorney shortly before
Were
their
disputes
deaths.
about
In
finances.
Boxcar's case, the signs
There were
all
growing
there,
questions
and
about
no
where
one
the money had
connected the
gone.
dots until now.
By the end,
This wasn't
many
just
said he confided
exploitation.
more in his
It looked
handlers,
coordinated.
one where
Whistleblowers
Out
from
could
within the
manipulate,
Branson
adding to the
entertainment
family
scene started
strain
speaking up
Boxcar's
anonymously.
considerable
One
success
claimed to have
and the
seen
revenue
Boxcar,
from his theater.
frail and
Despite his
disoriented,
children,
being
especially
coerced
his
into
son
signing a
Larry,
stack of
family
paperwork
members,
he barely looked at.
several large
Another
checks
revealed
were
that
written
after
to companies
Boxcar's death,
that had no
several
known
unreleased
connection to
recordings he
Boxcar's
planned to
career.
give to his grandchildren were
Shortly
quietly
before
sold
his
to an
passing,
out-of-state label
had
without the family's
reportedly been
knowledge.
removed
The
from
money,
one policy
it never
entirely.
appeared in the estate records.
The real emotional
Even more
gut
chilling was
punch,
the sudden disappearance
family
of
members
physical
discovered that not
memorabilia.
only had many of his
Boxcar's
personal
signature
possessions,
train
including
caps,
handwritten lyrics and
personalized
awards,
banjos, and
but even
handwritten
his
lyrics
will
were
had
all gone.
allegedly been
Fans who
altered,
had once visited his
and
Branson
portions of his
theater after
estate
his death
to a
noted that
private
the
trust
displays
managed
looked
by
different,
none other than
emptier.
the
It
associate.
was as if someone had
Seeking
cleaned
for
house
answers.
and done it fast.
Began
A
press
retired police
financial
officer
records
who'd once
revealed
worked
that
private
accounts once
security for the
jointly
theater
held
came
with family
forward
had
with a
been
damning
closed
statement.
or rerouted.
They moved things out
Even
at
more
night in unmarked
suspicious
vans
were
just
the
days after
insurance
he passed.
policies,
I
which
knew
had gone
something
through
was off.
abrupt
By this
beneficiary
point,
changes.
Boxcar's
Loeen,
children had
the
begun
natural
filing
choice,
formal complaints,
came after
attempting
Boxcar's
to recover
funeral.
missing
Possessions
funds
gone
and
missing.
property.
The new
Their legal
version
team
left control
unearthed
of
over a dozen
Boxcar's
questionable
image,
contracts,
music rights.
many of
When the
which were
family
signed
tried
just
to
weeks
contest
before
the
his
will,
death,
they were
while he
met
was
with strong
reportedly
legal
under heavy
pushback.
medication.
Boxcar's
A
name
forensic
through the
handwriting
mud.
expert reviewed the
But not
signatures
everyone
and
was
raised
willing
red
to stay
flags on
silent.
several. One
Came
was
forward with a
declared
heartbreaking
inconclusive,
letter.
another highly
Boxcar
suspicious.
allegedly expressed
And yet,
fear and
every
confusion
attempt to challenge the
that he was
documents in
being
court was met
managed
with
into
delay after
silence,
delay.
withholding
Meanwhile, the
medication.
court of public
If
opinion
anything
was turning.
happens to me,
Country music
tell the
fans
truth.
across the country
became a
rallied in
rallying
support of
cry
the
for
family.
those seeking
Online
justice.
forums,
The
once filled
family
with tributes,
began
were
pushing
now
harder
flooded with
for
outrage and
investigations.
questions.
Had
Who
now
let this
become
happen?
something else
Where was the
entirely.
oversight?
A
Why
web
did
of
no one
manipulation.
protect one of country's
The more
most
they
beloved
realized
icons
how
when
far
he
the
needed it
rot had
most?
spread.
But the family wasn't
Logically,
done. They began
but he may have
working
also
with an
been, he
independent
felt it.
journalist,
He
someone
wrote
who
it.
had previously covered the suspicious
It
death
was
of
about
another country
and
star.
why. And
Together, they
something
traced a trail
alarming
of shell
came to
companies,
light.
secret accounts,
Fear
and forged
and
documents,
control.
all
The
leading
deeper
back
the
to
family
one central
dug,
figure.
not only had
The same
Boxcar
business
been
partner who had
financially
inserted
exploited,
himself into
emotionally
Boxcar's life just
isolated
2
from the
years
people
before
who
he
mattered
passed.
most.
This man, once
the worst
dismissed
part?
as a harmless promoter,
He knew it.
had allegedly
The mystery
drained
wasn't
accounts,
just about
sold
what happened to
assets,
Boxcar
and
Willie,
rewritten
who let
history.
it happen.
And here's the haunting part.
As the
Boxcar
investigation
knew
deepened,
something was wrong.
and veiled
video
threats
recorded by
about
a
dragging
caretaker weeks
a distant
before his
cousin
death,
who had
but
spent
never
time with
released until
Boxcar
now.
in his final weeks.
Boxcar looked into the camera
In it,
and whispered,
he wrote that he
"They're
didn't
changing
feel in
everything.
control
Don't
anymore.
let them forget
He
who
mentioned
I
people
really was.
taking documents
It was
from
raw,
him,
unfiltered,
and even accusing Loeen of
heartbreaking.
being too
The family
nosy
has
when
kept
she
it
asked
hidden for
questions. questions.
Until now.
The letter
That
ended
footage
with a
will
chilling
air
line.
At the end of this documentary.
That's all I
But
want.
before we reveal it,
That
there's
letter,
one final
never
piece to the
formally
puzzle.
verified,
An audio
armed
recording
with
never
years of
before made
ignored
public
warning
that may
signs,
prove
and now
Boxcar Willie was
a final
fully
plea
aware
from
of the storm
Boxcar
swirling
himself.
around him.
What was
and it may
initially
expose
seen
the
as a
person
natural
responsible
end
once
to a
and for
long,
all.
storied
The
life
final piece of
and
the
a
puzzle
string of
wasn't
similar
hidden in a
country
vault or
stars,
buried in court documents.
older
It was
entertainers,
sitting on a dusty
many with
cassette
loyal
tape stored
fan
away in a
bases
shoebox
who
in
gained
Boxcar
control over
Willie's
their
old home in
image,
Rawls,
finances,
Texas,
and final
found by his
decisions.
grandson
In
while
nearly
going through
every
memorabilia
case,
the family
there were
had
abrupt
reclaimed
changes
after a
in
lengthy
legal
battle.
documentation
The tape was
shortly
labeled in
before their
faded
deaths.
handwriting.
In
Final
Boxcar's
show
case,
notes,
this
private.
wasn't just
What was assumed to be a
exploitation.
rehearsal
It looked
recording turned out to be
coordinated.
something entirely
Being
different.
coerced into signing a stack
Boxcar's
of
last
paperwork
message to the
he
world.
barely looked
The
at.
grainy audio begins
Another
with
revealed
silence.
that after
Then the
Boxcar's
slow
death,
creaking sound
there
of a
were
chair.
connections between
His
the
voice,
people controlling
worn and
Boxcar
raspy,
Willie's
but
estate.
unmistakably his,
Cases involving
breaks
other
through.
aging from the
If you're
Branson
listening
circuit.
to this,
A
something's
quiet
gone wrong.
pattern began
He
to
speaks
emerge,
plainly,
and valuable
without the
intellectual
character or
property
flair fans were
suddenly
used to.
found themselves
For over 10
surrounded
minutes,
by business
Boxcar
partners,
talks about his fears,
wills,
how he felt
trusts,
watched,
power of attorney.
manipulated,
The
and
signs
gradually
were
cut off
all
from his own
there,
family.
and no
He
one
names
had
names.
connected the dots
He references
until now.
documents he believed were
Whistleblowers
falsified.
from within the Branson
Conversations,
entertainment
he said,
scene
were secretly
started speaking up
recorded, and
anonymously.
his growing belief
One
that the
claimed
people
to have
around
seen
him weren't
Boxcar,
protecting him.
frail
They
and
were planning his
disoriented.
exit.
Several
He ends the
unreleased
tape with a
recordings he'd
haunting
planned to gift to his
"I played a train
grandchildren.
hobo
The
all my
money?
life,
It never
but I never
appeared
thought
in the
I'd
estate
really be left
records.
alone in the dark like
Boxcar's
one.
signature
Please
train
don't let them
caps,
rewrite my
personalized
ending."
lyrics,
The family
were
released
all
the audio
gone.
to the public on the
Fans,
25th
it was as if
anniversary of his
someone
death.
had cleaned
It
house
sent shockwaves
and done
through
it
the
fast.
country music world.
Came forward with a
Overnight,
damning
major
statement.
outlets picked up the story.
They moved in
Journalists
unmarked
began
vans
revisiting
just
the
days
timeline.
after he passed,
Legal experts
attempting to
reviewed
recover
his will
missing
again,
funds and
and
property,
fans flooded online
were
forums
quietly
with heartbreak
sold
and
to an
fury,
out-of-state label,
realizing that the
without the
smiling
family's
man who
knowledge.
made them laugh and cry
Even
may have
more
spent his
chilling was
final
the
days
sudden
betrayed
disappearance
and
of physical
isolated.
memorabilia.
In the wake of the audio's release,
Banjos and handwritten who had once
investigations were
visited
reopened.
his Branson
The man
theater
believed
after
to
his
be
death
behind the estate
noted that the
manipulation
displays
fled the
looked
country,
different,
triggering an
emptier.
international warrant.
A retired
Branson
police
Theater,
officer who'd
once
once
a temple
worked
to
private
Boxcar's
security for the
legacy,
theater,
removed
things
all
out
remaining
at night.
tributes and
I
shut
knew
its
something
doors.
was off.
Some saw it as
By
justice.
this point,
Others saw
Boxcar's
it as
children had
erasure,
begun
but
filing
the truth
formal
couldn't be
complaints.
buried anymore.
Their legal team
Today,
unearthed over a
Boxcar
dozen
Willie is
questionable
remembered not
contracts,
just for the
many
music,
of which were
the
signed just
overalls,
weeks
or
before
the
his
wail of a
death.
harmonica,
One was declared
but for his
inconclusive,
fight to protect the
another
legacy he built
highly
from the ground
suspicious.
up. He wasn't just a
Meanwhile, the court
character.
of public
He was a
opinion was,
father, a
while he was
husband, a
reportedly
veteran,
under heavy
and a man who
medication.
saw the cracks in a
A
system
forensic
that should have
handwriting
protected him.
expert
And now
reviewed the
the truth is
signatures
out.
and
The
raised red
mystery is
flags
solved,
on several.
and it isn't good.
And yet,